Recording. All right, we'll call the meeting to order with the approval of the agenda.
Make a motion, we approve the agenda.
Amended agenda?
Amended agenda, yes.
Yes,
thank
amended agenda, sorry.
I'll second it.
Need a second?
Tracy did.
Okay.
Motion and a second to amend, to approve the amended agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Approval of the December 16, 2020 minutes.
Moved, I didn't see anything myself.
Motion and a second. All in favor of the approval of minutes? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Public comments. Do we have anybody upstairs, Tim, or?
Yeah, we do. You want to check there first?
Yeah, I think so.
Mr. Chair, there are no comments up in the West Conference Room.
Okay. Thanks, Ben.
Anybody on the phone?
Anybody on the phone?
Any public comments? All right, we'll close public comments. None. Disclosure of conflicts. If we get there, you can raise your hand. Receipt of information from supervisors. Nobody on the phone that we know of, Tim?
I think so, but let's. Any supervisors on the phone? Would like to make a comment?
Nope.
It's like, no?
Yeah. Nothing? No. Parks Recreation, discussion on resolution 2102.
Morning, everyone. In your packet and before you is resolution 02-21. We have the numbers inverted, so actually 02-21. This is a staff-sponsored and written resolution. And really what it is, it's a summary of our work over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks. What they are is original, excuse me?
I don't have it. It
Yeah,
wasn't
we
in
don't
my
have it.
packet.
It was in the packet.
Not in your
It
packet.
was?
Yeah.
Oh, I printed the whole thing.
It's in the packet on the computer, but I don't have that.
Should be, mine. Well, Carol makes copies of that resolution. Just want to explain the content. Again, it's just a summary of the work and additional edits and clarification and justification language added to the adopted master plan, which was per resolution 2020, which was passed last summer. Basically, there's no changes to the original intent of the submitted master plan. These are additional clarifying and explanatory edits to the master plan. In other words, no substantial content was changed or altered. I'd like to point out, too, that the original resolution to work on the Stour Master Plan was adopted and passed in July of 2017. The selected alternatives, SA3 and EA2, were approved and as adopted in the original master plan, were supported with these additional edits and upheld by adding this more clarifying language. If you all recall, the work group consisting of staff and DNR met over the course of the last 5 or 6 weeks The DNR's role was really to review the master plan to determine compliance with the obligations of the MOU. Our role was to support the selected of alternatives, again, SA3 and EA2, as approved and adopted in the submitted master plan. We met 6 times since December 2nd, and we experienced, like I mentioned before, very high level of scrutiny. The DNR did provide us with an 8-page list of notes or concerns or shortcomings that lied within roughly 15 sections of the MOU. And so it was our job to provide further clarification and really justify how the county would provide for safety, displacement, and accommodation of all the user groups. So after each meeting, subsequent to each 6 meetings, staff got together, we compiled existing data because we had such a robust public process. We didn't recreate anything. And we found enough information to address the DNR's concerns and provide more clarity to them to justify and support these selected users in the adopted master plan. Overall, I think Carol made you a hard copy. This is the new version. Overall, we've added roughly 13 pages. New data, information, and clarification to justify those selected alternatives. As of today, we're going to try to get it on the county website. It is available, hard copy as well. But we want to get that out to the broader community for them to at least be aware of it. In fact, this hard copy we printed off, the text that is in red is what is new, what has been added. And fortunately, as a byproduct, again, of our public process, we had enough information to provide that clarification in the master plan. Yesterday afternoon, again, I mentioned the original enabling resolution to work on this master plan was dated July 2017. Yesterday, after 3.5 years, we received a letter from the DNR with assurances that the clarifying support and edits in language will satisfy the county's obligations to the MOU and that the master plan is compliant. So we got this yesterday. It's a big step forward, particularly for some type of resolution. The things that you need to be aware of and are a big part of this resolution before you are the new county commitments. And I'll just paraphrase what those are. We are to construct an off-trail rustic winter use pedestrian trail from Keller Avenue to Baker Avenue. That's roughly 0.8 mile, a round trip 1.6 miles. That's stage 1. There is language in the plan that that pedestrian trail will continue on to stage 2 from Baker Avenue to County C, and then stage 3, County C to Lotus Lake. There is language that if there is a need and the demand arises, that we implement that. The county does implement stage 2 and 3. The other county commitment is to develop a cross-country ski trail in D.D. Kennedy Park and Algren Park. And coincidentally, we've been working on this as early as last summer. Along with Mo, Ben Elfelt, Mark Gossman have plan that trail. There are some connectivity issues that we're working through. Also, in the Parks Capital Improvement Plan for 2021, you all approved and allocated roughly $7,000 for that project. So that's some good news. We're already working on that. That commitment is to accommodate those potentially displaced user groups like cross-country skiers, snowshoers, and fat tire bikists. The other significant clarifying detail is a defined season for our equestrian folks. The further clarity in the master plan provides that the trail is open during a 7.5-week period only for equestrians. The entire month of October up until rifle season. Now, there is some language in here that the season may be adjusted. So in other words, the county has the liberty of extending or moving that season based upon a measurable demand or user data. In other words, if there's a connectivity issue with our equestrian neighbors, or there's major usage, if it can be measured, that will allow us to extend or move the season. So if Resolution 02-21 is recommended by the Environmental Services Committee and approved by the County Board, potentially could be on the January 19th agenda. I think we've taken a very significant step towards resolution of the Stour Seven Lakes recreational trail. Yes, sir.
In reading through this at home on line 30, where you just discussed stage 1,
Mm-hmm.
the way I read it, that has to, well, it does say completed prior to pedestrian trail. This will provide a round trip, but does that have to be done before the snowmobiles can be on the trail?
Yes, sir.
And it just seems like we're pushing ourselves. I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I'm not doing that. I'm just questioning what I read. It just pushes the whole system back one more year. So we're taking another year to implement our master plan. Isn't that true?
Well, it depends. I mean, we need to allocate, we need to allocate some resources to do the trail. We've been out there as early as last week and yesterday surveying. There are some challenges, particularly when you get towards the Twin Lakes there. We did get some affirmation from the DNR that they can come up on the rail bed and share the rail bed and then go back down. I'm giving you a long answer, Supervisor Rowdy, but if we needed to punch a trail through there this winter, I think we can do the planning, engineering, and construction this winter for stage 1.
Pressing on it to get something.
Well, this trail specifications for a rustic trail is simply a 4-foot wide diameter trail, similar like an Ice Age trail. There's no base material, just creating a rustic hiking, walking, snowshoeing, cross-country ski trail. And the reason we found this is to be an alternative is we're providing an equivalent or beyond an equivalent experience by displacing those user groups. We create an adjacent trail for them. The experience is either equivalent or greater. And so the DNR seemed to be satisfied with that approach.
I'm not questioning the safety issue, and we have those at home. Many people do in their woods. Mackenzie Creek has them. The Straight Lake Park has them. It's just a matter of saying, if we're working on that, can't we put the snowmobiles on?
The trail has to be in place before snowmobiles are allowed.
Had to make my point, that's all.
Stage 2 and 3 are much more challenging if you look at the topography of the grade. Stage 1 isn't as arduous or difficult as the other 2 stages. That's why it's important we're out there to survey, make sure we're on that right away. When there's enough space, we know what type of brushing and tree clearance we'll have to do. We just need the resources and the directive to do it. Talking to staff, I think we're pretty confident we could put that trail in place this winter.
So are you going to post the letter online too from the DNR, Bob?
I'm sorry?
Are you going to post the letter from the DNR approving the plan on the website also?
We can. We got it yesterday afternoon. We definitely want to get the master plan out there. We certainly can add the letter as well.
Any more questions for Bob?
Thank you for all your work on this.
Bob, will P-TAG have a part in all of these stages or no?
That's a really good question.
What was the question, Tracy? I missed it.
Will P-TAG have a
Oh,
part in any of these stages of what we're obligated to?
They haven't been involved with this project until now. It depends on, I suppose, the PTAG's desire to tackle this. I can see a role with them in terms of trail planning, particularly with the later stages, stage 2 and 3. But up until now, they haven't played any particular role. We have the staff to do both the engineering, the survey work, and the planning for it. We have volunteer user groups to help do some of the work to subsidize the costs. They're all mobilized and willing to help us. In an effort to build consensus and build relationships, it'd be a good idea to bring in some of the existing user groups as well and get together and talk about this new trail experience. The PTAG could be a part of that. That's the best I can answer.
but I think it would have to be in the other phases. I mean, we're already committed to phase 1. It's going to happen right away. So, any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion one way or the other on resolution 2102.
Tracy, I couldn't quite hear you. You made a motion to accept?
Yeah.
I can second.
Motion made and seconded to approve resolution 2102. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Thank you.
So the next one here is apparently mine. I had Bob put this on the agenda. If you remember, probably back in November, maybe the first meeting in December when we were discussing purchasing land. More land out in the Mackey Lake, McKinley area. I went on my, I'll say, rant of, we've got 17,000 acres. We need to open it up and let people use it. And that's kind of what this is about. I'd like to see this committee move forward and allow ATVs, UTVs to use those skidder trails, logging road trails, whatever they may be, on county land when a season, when a hunting or, hunting, fishing, or trapping season is open. Not opening them up to full board traffic, and trails, but just saying, if you're doing one of those things when that season is open and you're, a mile back in wherever, trout fishing, you can be there on your four-wheeler. I don't want to see the county become like the DNR where we own all this land and, oh, it's for everybody, but, oh yeah, no one can use it. And some of these places, it's a long, long ways in. If you're going to walk in there, and I just think it's as taxpayers, no matter who you are, we're all paying more taxes because of that county land. And I just think it's a way for people to be able to use it and get around. There again, a lot of them places, it's deep enough, nobody's going to go and drag a deer out. Go fishing back there, whatever it might be. But if all of a sudden I can take my four-wheeler or my UTV back into the woods, and get within a quarter mile of my deer stand, then it's a pretty good deal. And the second half of it, I didn't realize Doug's committee was already working on it that in depth, but was to just say to tell the ATV UTV committee to, go out and a recommendation from this committee to go out and try and, establish some trails around the county on county forest land. And then as I walked in, Doug was talking about it today.
That's why it's in written handwritten.
Because it would still be trail-like. It wouldn't be just open it up and everybody can just.
Right. It isn't your group of 15 ATVers or UTVers have every acre of county land. It's like, okay, if I say I'm back there fishing, I should probably have a fishing pole, hooked on.
Just let me fill in. I'm not just giving you our committee's thoughts.
Yep.
And actually, Mark and Bob have been out there and looked at Mackey. And we're looking at because there's an established trail there, hopefully we could set up I don't know what year round because of the depth of the snow, but let's just say, so the people come up and use Polk County, and that trail is there already established, except it needs a culvert and some gravel, and just use it as a trail. And I understand your hunting, I really do, because as older people, they got to be able to get out there and use the land.
Yeah, and all I'm getting at is wherever it is, if it can be a trail, that's perfect. But certainly there's spots where it doesn't justify a trail.
Oh yeah, we're not looking at that. We're looking at
and I'm saying on those spots that aren't justifying a trail. I mean, okay, just to stay close to home for me, I'll say Summers Lake. I couldn't even tell you if the trail is still there. There used to be a half-mile ATV trail there, 25 years ago. But that's a chunk. There's never going to be a trail in it from, like your group, because it isn't going to justify it. But all of a sudden, if I go shoot a deer or something on the back of Summers Lake, and I can take my four-wheeler in there to get it because there is a trail somewhere where I can get close, that's a really big deal. I mean, I sit on thousands of acres of state land, and no one uses it. No one uses it anymore because you've got to come in from one end or the other, and it's 3/4 of a mile to get to the center of it or more from either end. And I don't want to see that happen to our county land. I think there are ways, and you know what? If it's abused, then put a gate across the trail and shut it down. I mean, there is spots on to me, the backside of Mackey Lake where the snowmobile trail goes through where it should never be open to four-wheelers, in the summertime. I mean, it might be a swamp in the middle of the winter yet for the snowmobilers to get across. But on these spots where it is drier, higher ground, I just don't see any reason why we're keeping people out of using it as a recreational source of, not recreational as four-wheelers, but recreational as going hunting, fishing, trapping, whatever the season might be, and allowing people to get in there and use the county forest land.
in our discussions, Ben has been there at our ad hoc committee. And he talks about establishing a trail, let's say like I'm talking to Mackie, or we're actually talking a lot about Sterling. Well, in order to do that, there's so many hoops you have to jump through. He said it's a long process, but it can be done. But one of the steps in the process is the DNR has to approve that trail. And that means you're not going to have any wetlands or any muddy areas or anything like that. So if you get the involvement to try and set these trails up so that they can be used, then we're talking about maybe possibly, and the people in the committee understand that much better than I do, but we're working on the fact that if it becomes an established trail, then it becomes a ATV, UTV trail, and there's possible dollars coming from the state. So then the trail can be maintained year-round and used. So, I mean, it's just what opportunity is what we're looking at. I mean, you are too. I'm not saying that.
And I agree. I mean, I think anywhere where that trail is justifiable and can be made, I think I'm all for having the trail. I'm saying in those spots outside of where.
And yeah, though you're talking, which is true, outside of the area of an established trail.
Right.
Because then they could be used in a situational time.
Yeah, it isn't a year-round trail. It isn't a daily trail. It's you'd almost call it a seasonal trail. I mean, in the scheme of things, trout season opens the first Saturday of May, and gun season deer season ends the 1st of January in the scheme of things. As far as bow season, but it'd be in that case, a 7-month, 8-month type of thing. I just look at where that trail isn't justifiable. Again, on the back of Summers Lake, where it's like this, the ability for an older hunter, I'll say, to be able to get in there, perhaps shoot a deer, and the ability to take a 4-wheeler in and get it, and not have to worry about, because I would tell him to just close his eyes and take the 4-wheeler, but to not have to worry about getting fined because he took a 4-wheeler across county land to pick up a deer.
I understand because I'm in the McKinsey area and you can't ride in there.
Right.
And
Right, and that's, like I said, I don't want the county to become the Wisconsin DNR where we own these huge chunks of land and then we gate it all off and say, we own it. We have, the town of Clam Falls has roughly 1,600 acres of state land in it, and we get, I believe, $1 an acre for taxes, in that land. So, and it's really no different on the county side. We're paying for the 17,000 acres, and I think we should be able to use that 17,000 acres, as long as we use it appropriately.
there was an article this week in the Wisconsin Outdoorsman, and it was about Wapaka County, and they want to put ATV, UTVs on their county land, and there's a lot of negative on it. They only have 200 acres. That's their county land.
That's the extent of the county.
You've got horses, and you've got hikers, and you've got skiers, and they just said it won't work well. We have a lot more land.
Yeah.
Disperse everybody out.
Yeah. So that was my speech on it. I'm not necessarily looking for a discussion or, an answer or anything today.
Okay.
I just, and like I said, I put the last portion on because I didn't know that your committee was involved already, in working on trails. But I guess I'll ever talk with Bob or Mark or somebody and see what we can do, and we'll see it on a future agenda again.
Okay.
When we discuss and see what our options really are. Like I say, I wanted to bring it to the committee. So.
Bob and Ben will keep us updated then.
Go ahead, Bob.
I'd just like to confirm, Ben's been attending the meetings with this ATV, UTV council. I know you're interested in that Sterling Loop because that is something that would be a low-hanging fruit. There's still some challenges, like you said, Doug. And in Summers Lake, we have some ideas about that as well. But the reason I'm kind of interjecting here is within the next meeting or so, you'll get a significant request or an update from PTAC as well. So all these things are intertwined. So I think PTAC could be a partner here as well and help find some solutions as we work to find space for all of our music groups.
All right, you're up again on 8, Bob.
Okay, we're going to have Tim.
You want to run this in case there's anybody online? All right, good morning.
So, Tim, just clarification, did we have anybody online from the towns who was jumping in, do you know?
I
Or
haven't checked to see if anybody's from the town online. Down here. Down here. These. Anyone from the town online? Last one more time. Anybody from the towns online on the phone?
Town of Beaver.
Okay. Sabrina, is that you?
Yeah, Sabrina, sorry.
Let's call
Can
it
you guys
5.
hear me?
Yeah, we got you on. That's caller 5.
Am I the only one?
Tracy, did Clayton send anybody?
Zach?
I was just checking.
That's me.
Well, that's not fair.
Here.
He's on the board there.
Okay. So it sounds like Sabrina from the town of Beaver is the only one.
Okay.
If you like, I can just have an update as to what we heard back from the PSC and move forward through that. As requested at the last meeting, we reached out to the Public Service Commission to see if anyone could come here and kind of explain their process. Unfortunately, we didn't get a response that someone was available, but I sent the list of questions and comments that you guys developed at the last meeting to them. And what you'll see, I gave you guys a couple handouts. And one of them is this one that starts with Tim. It's a couple of emails that we got back from the Public Service Commission. In their opinion, most of what we were asking is directed to the developer. So we need to have those get answered by them. That same list of topics and questions and concerns was also sent to Kara at National Grid Renewables. I have confirmed with her that she can attend the February 3rd meeting here in person. So those questions and comments can get addressed then as well from their perspective. As far as the Public Service Commission goes, it looks like they have 3 things they felt like they would be or wanted to give answers to before the meeting here. And the first was about decommissioning and assurities and short-term guarantees, and said that that is not their responsibility in terms of guaranteeing any financial transactions around decommissioning. So that's something we'll have to pursue further with the developer and look at other examples of where these projects have gone in and how those financial assurities get taken care of. And it doesn't sound like it goes through the PSC. Second question there is, what is a CPCN? That's a certificate of public convenience and necessity. It's described in the statutes 196.491 sub 3 and the administrative code of PSC 111 chapter 6. Generally speaking, it is the Public Service Commission's permitting process for large projects such as the Apple River Solar Project, which meets the requirements for needing this certificate. It is a joint application process with the Department of Natural Resources. It gathers information for DNR's permitting needs as well. The process is expected to take approximately a year, where commission staff will request additional data from the applicant. Comments on the environmental scoping and assessment will be collected from the public. Testimony from the parties will be prepared and public hearings will be held. That's kind of outlining what the process that Apple River Solar is going through right now. Their project, get their project up and running. The process will culminate in a commission deliberation and an open meeting where the final decision will be made about the project. And then finally, the minimum of 8 feet for fencing or the PSC higher requirement, stating that the PSC does not have a specific fencing requirement other than those required by the NSC or NESC for high voltage substations for safety for the public and for our okay. So not a whole lot of information there, but that's,
Hey, Tim,
yeah.
do we know on that last question, I mean, on the SCS and the NESC, do we know if it is an 8-foot minimum?
I just got these, so I haven't
Okay.
looked into it, but we can, yeah, I think that's something we can look into to see what the requirements are there. Question? Okay. Any questions on that right now?
Do we know how far, I mean, it says 1 year process. Do we know how, are they 4 months in, 8 months in? Do we have any idea of where in the year-long process they're at today?
Good question. I'm not sure if there was any preliminary work done before the application was submitted and if that counts towards this project, but the project, I believe the application was submitted in late October. So if we're running on that date,
Okay.
we're a couple 2-3 months in. Yep. I guess that kind of leads me to the next thing in your packet. You got this flow sheet for the Public Service Commission. I believe you do anyway.
Yeah, it was on the computer, yeah.
Yeah. All right. I can pull. It's available. I have it up. If you want to pull it up too, Bob, it's down. I believe it's in there. We can share. Yeah. Go back to the WebEx stuff and go to share screen. Go up and share the screen.
You're already sharing this, then?
I just want you to share the screen and you can figure out which one you want to share. Yeah. So share. Share. Right here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then go to, I think, Adobe. Go to Adobe Acrobat here. And then we can pick which Adobe it is. This. There we go. That way everybody can see it. So the other sheet that I had for you, this handout that's stapled together with Public Service Commission of Wisconsin at the top, that's the latest update stating that they are on to the next phase, which is looking at the environmental assessment. And we're at this point where the public comment period on the environmental assessment and the scoping for that environmental assessment is beginning. So the fourth box down.
So is that just the public comment period on the environmental assessment or on the project as a whole?
My understanding is it's on the environmental assessment. So, we did receive notice of proceeding from them on the 22nd of December, which starts the clock for becoming an intervener, which is another way that you become involved in this process. By becoming an intervener, that gives you more say when it comes to the hearings and that kind of thing for the Public Service Commission process. I asked, and you can see in the notes from Bert here, the bottom section of this sheet, that based on his calculations, this Friday is the date to become an intervener. So I'm working with Corporation Counsel because it's not just like checking a box. You have to like put together a document that applies for this. And I'm looking at the other examples that we've seen from different projects that request this intervener status. So I'll work with Malia and Joe to get that done before Friday. Unless you guys don't think we need to be an intervener as a county, but I guess I was running under the assumption that we want to be.
Yeah, I mean,
Deadline.
we want to have a seat at the table, so to speak.
Yeah. And I think after I work with Malia and Joe on that to get it squared away, we can share that information with the towns. That letter, I believe, the email that I got, the one that you see at the bottom, I can forward this to you guys as the towns. There's a link there. And if you click on that, that kind of gets you started in the process. It's a more involved thing than just, again, like I said, clicking a button and say, yes, please make us an interview. You gotta go explain through the statute language why you need to become an intervener. It's pretty basic, but you still need to do that and request that. So I want to make sure that the towns have that option too and share that information. So they can do that if they need to be. Otherwise, the other option is if they can't get it in time, typically the Public Service Commission allows them to apply later and still become part of it, or we can be the intervener on their behalf since we're going to be an intervener. Those are kind of a couple options that we can provide to the towns. So, what we've done so far is invite the towns, to the meetings today. They've been invited to the meetings on the 3rd when Kara and Renewables, National Grid Renewables will be here. And like we did last time, we asked you guys what your issues and concerns were for this project, for both PSC and for the developer. We can continue that process. We're going to do that today as well. See if there are any additional questions or concerns that you still need to get answered.
Just checking. And Sabrina, if you're still on, I mean, do you have anything?
Tell you what, it's really hard listening over the phone on there. So are you just talking about the first part, or are you talking about all of it? Any questions? Or this first, I just logged on to see what you guys were showing. So are you just talking about the application review process? Is that your question to me? Oh, shoot. Okay, sorry now. Can you hear me?
Is it a little bit better?
Okay. I had myself muted, so I was already talking. So is the question just regarding the application review process that you just went over?
I think it's.
Or is your question regarding the whole packet that you guys sent to our town?
I think the packet or any questions you have in general about the project, stuff that you as the town want addressed, or questions or concerns you want addressed before by the developer or the PSC.
Yes, we do have a question. Is if they're not going to be utilizing us, period, then maybe we should not be included on the joint development agreement, or because obviously they're not giving us anything. So otherwise, the other concern is if they do come in and decide to use us, I think then maybe we should have it be on page 4 where it breaks up where everybody, the towns and the county, are getting money, that maybe there should be a stip in there saying that if you guys do come into Beavertown, that just because you're not paying us nothing the way it looks, they can come into Beaver and they're not going to pay us nothing. So I think there should be a stipulation in there that if they decide to go in there and use the land there, or just take us out completely and don't even come into, or take us out of the joint development agreement. Then I don't know how to word that correctly. But you see where I'm saying a hairy situation there, because you see the 0, but yet they're only using us as an alternative, supposedly. And if we were to sign this, that's open game right there.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing anyways, Sabrina, is that if you're not going to be part of it, should you be out of the agreement completely? And if you are, there needs to be language in here that defines what the compensation for the town of Beaver would be.
When they do, if they decide to use the land that they're suggesting, yes.
Okay.
And that's only a smart move for any town that would be in that type of situation.
Okay.
Or do we have just a separate one? You know, have the 3 towns with this one, and then we have a separate one for us as the alternative part.
I think it's important for the town, like the town of Beaver there, to know what, like Sabrina said, to know what they're going to be paid. I mean, if they come into Beaver, then what's Beaver going to get? You know, and if they don't, at least that way, it's on paper. Beaver would know, okay, if they use our land in our town, here's what we're going to be paid. Because, yeah, right now it's zero. You know, and maybe they come in and use 500 acres in Beaver because the price is zero.
Makes sense.
I'm just trying to cover us just in case.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. I think we've got down what you were discussing.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, I'm just letting you know, I think we did my summary of what you mentioned, cover what you were trying to get across.
I think you guys had covered all the other questions that we had too.
Yep.
I believe on there, I did not really get a chance to look at this because the information, not that that our clerk gave us wasn't until late Sunday night, and I didn't check my email because I was already in bed until Monday and didn't get to really look at it. Monday night, I mean, when I printed it out and then started looking at it last night. So that's our issue.
The good thing is there's still time yet.
Yeah, and anytime you guys come up with questions or comments, you can feel free to forward them on to me.
Okay. And you guys are still having the meeting in February too, so we can really look at this a little bit more then, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And I think you guys made the driveway, the access stuff a little bit bigger, which it should, which we needed that to be. Well, you guys got 12 to 20 feet. So would we want that to be bigger than 12 feet? And I'm just thinking of if they're bringing construction or big vehicles in there, you know, when they're turning out, we don't want them damaging the town roads. So in the encroachment part, or where it meets the town or county road, that part of it. I mean, yeah, you still want the rest of the driveway to be wide, but it doesn't necessarily need to be as wide as it is when it's meeting the municipality road.
But I think there, Tim, wasn't our recommendation to them. I mean, a 30-foot wide entrance and then a minimum of a 20-foot wide road was what we sent to them, I think, at our last meeting.
Okay.
Is our recommendations, because at least I look at it from an EMS standpoint. Maybe there's not going to be anybody there in theory, but there's going to be somebody there sometime. If you've got to get the ambulance, the fire department, it needs to be more than 12 feet.
Oh, definitely, yes. And that's just the way I think all like the ambulance, they're all requesting that with everything new, and they really like to have the existing ones put to that too, but there's just some places it's not feasible.
All right, Tim. Yeah, go ahead and move on.
All right. I think what we'll do next is just go through a similar process to last time to see if there's anything additional that you guys would like to have added to the list. questions or concerns.
And I told Bob to just leave this on kind of indefinitely. I mean, it's just to look at the joint development agreement again, so that if one of us walks into a meeting and says, oh, I was looking at it, and it's, it's on the agenda, and we're good to go. So I think we'll just leave that on there until this process is over with, kind of.
You want me to break this bad boy out, and do you have anything today that we would like to add to the list?
I don't.
I don't either, I think. I'm fine with the list that we have right
Yeah,
now.
and there again, as much as anything, I just want to keep it on so that if somebody does, or a town does, it's there and we can add to it. So she's going to be here, Kara's, I believe, she's going to be here 2 meetings from now on February.
Yeah, the first meeting is on the 3rd, right.
Okay.
Yep. Any questions or concerns?
There again, most of our questions were kind of geared towards them rather than that.
Yeah, absolutely. We can figure out what the specs are for the NSC and NESC for the fencing.
So there again, do we have any time frame as to, I'll say when the county gets their seat at the table, when that hearing will be?
In the letter that you guys have, it says that hearing time has not been determined yet, but that they will give us 60 days notice before that hearing comes.
Okay.
PSC. Yep. We'll have time to discuss what our course of action and how we want to proceed at those hearings. Yep.
So Tracy, just kind of from your town, I mean, do you think your town will be looking for a seat at the table? When that time comes, I mean,
I'm not
I
sure.
would say regardless, we should be, there should be somebody in each town on the seat
Yeah.
so that they know what's going on.
I would hope that, maybe somehow or another, and there again, we don't know about Beaver because they're kind of out of it, but I'll say the big three, if they could work together, at least if they kind of at least agreed on how things should go, if they could work together and just have somebody at the table, if they so chose, rather than maybe having 3 or 4 different ones, if they could collaborate, work together, and pick one, or maybe.
Yeah, and I think we can offer that as well as the county to say, like, if you want to channel your input through us or whatever, we can advocate for you that way too. Whatever the towns feel is most appropriate. I guess that's what with the outreach and education we've tried to do so far is I think we've been trying to be the person that says, or the entity that says, if you want to, we'll provide that for you. If you don't and you want to do it on your own, we'll work with you on that too, but it's up to you how much you want to delegate or keep within your own right at the town.
So, because I don't know how much this is out there, I mean, as a committee, would we I don't know, is it Bob, is it Vince? I don't know, to discuss this at the next county board meeting so that, what I don't want to happen is that we get 6 months down the road and there's board members saying, oh boy, we didn't even know that this was on the table. And just the fact that, they're coming on February 3rd. Other county board supervisors could watch, be here, whatever. But it would be a time to at least put it out there, and this is a possibility of what's coming to Polk County. Because it's big enough, I would not want to see it just dropped in the county board's lap, in November or whenever that date is. Did you ever hand up, Bob?
Yes, I think that's a great idea, sharing this with the full county board. The question is when? Would it be after the developer comes and addresses some of these concerns? Because as Tim has suggested, we have done this. We've been funneling your concerns to them. They're scheduled to come in February. They're rewriting the JDA. So what would be the most appropriate time to bring this to the full county board? Prior to National Grid renewables presentation like this month or after their presentation in February?
I would say, I don't know that it has to be brought a lot. I guess I would say that we mention it in January, and if it's as simple as they're coming February 3rd to environmental services, and there will be updates later.
Just the project scope.
Well, I mean, and just, there's a solar farm potentially coming to Polk County, and the developer's going to be at environmental services on February 3rd. More information to follow.
Didn't they talk to the board meeting once already? We didn't? Or it was just
Yeah, at
here?
our committee meeting.
It was just here.
Yeah,
We haven't seen them at the board at all. Okay.
yeah. But I mean, that way, if another county board supervisor wanted to come or realized that, it was going to be, they could tune in or,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I don't think it has to be anything elaborate, just they're going to be here on February 3rd if you're interested.
That's January.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, Chairman Olson, so just to clarify and formalize this, because the deadline to becoming or applying to become a intervener is Friday, we have the green light to on behalf of
Go ahead.
the county, go ahead, okay.
Yeah, well, they've got the green light, right? I mean,
Yeah.
And it's really up to the towns whether or not if they want to become interveners, but if they don't or have trouble deciding, they can still funnel those concerns to us and Tim, and we can raise those concerns when the public hearing is held later next.
yeah, we could, the county, you're saying, could raise Clayton's concerns or Apple Rivers or whoever's as Clayton's concerns over, yeah, okay.
And then, outside of doing another group process, if you as individuals, as well as other county board, if you have concerns or issues or questions, you can always email us, Tim or I, and we can either answer or, again, be that vehicle to get to the developer and the PSC.
So maybe I missed it when I was looking at the PSC graph before, but there really is no public hearing as far as anybody else. I mean, we become interveners, and that's kind of the voice for everybody, right? I mean,
Anyone can be an intervener, an individual, unit of government. There is just that application process and that, again, that seat, that voice at the public hearing part of the process.
Just a higher level of participation, it sounds like. There's still like avenues to, they have like a file complaint or an issue section on their website, so you can send stuff directly to them if you'd like. But this is a more formalized process. Yeah. Any other questions or concerns about the Apple River Solar Project at this time?
did they get back to us at all on the questions for the most part that we sent them? Apple River Solar or National Grid or whoever, I mean.
They're aware.
They're aware, okay.
And it's preparing them for their presentation on
Okay.
February 3rd. I believe they'll be bringing a colleague, someone from their legal as well.
Yeah, well, they might just be calling in, but yeah, Kara asked.
Carrie, who was here months ago, will be here again in person. And I believe they're adjusting the JDA as well. So we meet some of these concerns. So there's that.
So we'll have a new JDA from them at that point, perhaps.
Likely, yeah, at least some proposed new language for sure. Yeah, and unless you want them sooner, I kind of laid it out to her that these are the issues we'd like you to address when you're here in February. That's something different, let me know.
Along with anything else that arises.
All right. Anything else?
Maybe one last thing. I mean, if it'd be nice, I guess, if nothing else is the committee, if we had to if the county got a copy of that joint development agreement before the meeting, if it got kicked out to us, just so we could have rather than walking in and here it is, if we could have even just a day or two to see it.
Absolutely.
Anything else? Thank you. Again, just as a refresher, in your packet was the compiled list from our last meeting.
Go ahead, Bob.
Visual updates. 8C. We are interviewing 5 candidates for the zoning compliance technician tomorrow. Didn't have a very large applicant pool, but we had a lot of quality applicants. It's a new position, and it's going to take a unique individual or personality to do it proficiently. So we're really excited about that. Jason, Steve Geiger, and I will be doing those interviews tomorrow. The annual reports for all of our departments within the Environmental Services Division is in your packet. Just in terms of just times efficiency, we'll be giving some informal presentations on each department throughout the year, and they'll be pointing towards these annual reports. In fact, we'll probably start off with Jason because he will be delivering a program demonstration on the Ascent software that you all supported. And he'll also tie in his annual report, which is in your packet. So I just wanted to point that out. And that's all I have, unless you have some questions. Thank you.
Jason, well, I'll ask first. Does anybody want to take a break? Makes no difference to me, but. Okay, Jason, you're up.
At your last meeting, we had some proposed fence language that I followed up that meeting with and sent it out to you as an email. The fence one, the second one. At that meeting, we talked about adding the definition of an open fence. A little bit. One of the main things that we also wanted to address, because right now a fence can be up to 35 feet high, like an accessory building or an accessory structure. So we also had a height limitation that we put in there for privacy and an open fence to be 12 feet tall. That'd be the max height. Okay. Wanted to clarify in that an open fence can be placed within the ordinary high watermark setback, or the 75 feet. However, that requires a permit to be able to make sure that it is an open fence and not a privacy fence before it's built. So that's provision E there. Number 8 was some of the committee's concerns at the last meeting. I had thrown in a 2-foot side yard setback to kind of start the conversation. And then we were talking about that we'd have like a 4-foot gap then around the property line that would be hard to mow. So number 8, I changed that to say that it's exempt from any side yard setback, but has to be constructed completely on the fence owner's property. So it can go right up to the line, but just can't, be over the line at all. This is another thing here, because some of the examples that I showed you were around county roads and around state roads. Changed it to not only having a town be able to approve a reduced fence in that setback to the road for a private road or a town road, but also to allow a county, and that, like our county highway department, to be able to approve a reduced fence setback to a county road. Currently, in that, a fence would have to be 75 feet from the center line of the road or 42 feet from the right of way, whichever is greater. So that would be an option there. We have a lot of our county and state right-of-ways that can be a little bit wider than that, and that could be quite a burden on a property owner and that, if they do have more right-of-way in front of their property. And then open fences, this is my farm fence or my boundary fence are exempt from road setbacks, but cannot encroach upon any easement or road right-of-way. That basically for the farmer can go right up to the back slope of the bank or the 33 feet from the center of the road, and that's where they can have their open fence or their property boundary fence. So just to clarify that. So that's all I have on fences.
If we go back up to the top, Jason, on the 12 feet, and that's, don't get me wrong, that's way better than 35 feet, I think. I talked to an individual in a different town who said they only allowed 6-foot fences from the standpoint that if you were going to be over 6, it had to be engineered just from the standpoint of them falling in. And even now at 12, let's say both your neighbors on a lake shore have a 12-foot fence and they both fall on your property, that's realistically covering 1/4 of your lot. And like I say, it isn't that I'm against 12. It's just that.
An arbitrary number.
Yeah, no, I know that it's
starting point.
And you said you picked it out because they came in 6-foot chunks.
So, there's no statutory requirements that you're tied to on a privacy fence. There is on the open fences, and that are the legal boundary fences. As far as, we had to have 4 feet of chicken wire and then, 2 barbs or whatever. There's stuff like that for that, but nothing on the privacy.
And I just think, and maybe it isn't a safety issue for police at all. I don't know how many privacy fences are in the county. I'll just say I'd like to be able to at least have a chance to look over them if I was a police officer and had to respond. And at 6 feet, at least I've got a chance. At 12 feet, I'm too fat to jump that high. So, I guess I'm going to say I would much rather see that at 6 feet for a privacy fence. Just my opinion. There again, I'm looking at it, at 12 feet, like I say, if they both sides fall on your property, it's covering 1/4 of your property. So that would be my only recommended change.
My suggestion is that I'm not trying to create policies. Maybe you'd want to go to 7 feet because a lot of the panels that you buy are 6 feet. And a lot of privacy fences that I see, they leave them up a little bit on the bottom, or the post in between the panels is up a little bit slightly. And that, so you might prohibit somebody from being able to just buy custom 6-foot panels.
6 feet kind of contradicts the idea of a privacy fence because people are 6 feet tall can look right over.
Oh. You got to include your forehead too, Vance.
I can see the 7.
Your eyes aren't 6 feet high. Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with 7.
Do you get a lot of requests for 12-foot fences?
No.
Okay.
No. I started it at the same, and that we do see deer fences and that are neat, that are pretty common, and that around people's gardens. Don't even really see 10-foot tall open fences, but so I just threw it out there as a one,
I like
Yeah.
the 7.
Yeah,
idea of
I'm
7.
fine with 7. I mean, that way you can weed whip underneath it.
Yeah,
You go ahead, Doug.
I don't really have an opinion on it, but I was just say, we're back to Kim here. Why not be 8 feet? Because most of your building materials run in lengths like that.
Sure, I was going because Jason said last meeting that they came in 6-foot chunks, so that's why I went with 6.
I don't know that they do it. Normally you talk about a 6 foot, 8 foot, 12 foot,
Yeah,
you know.
dimensional lumber.
Yeah.
Did I see your hand up, Bob, or were you?
No, sir, no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you that the ones that we see a lot, you know, and that they're either the picket style, you know, on that privacy fence, or now they got these new PVC, you know, white vinyl panels that are solid. Those are common. Usually like the wood ones, you know, those ones will be a little bit closer to the ground, but the PVC ones that I've seen, they actually hold them up about 6 inches off the grass, you know, so I don't think they do real well for weed whip system and stuff like that.
One question.
Sure, I would.
From a construction standpoint, you know, we have had problems in the past building fences, and normally it's only on lake property. So, you know, to build a fence, we've had issues in the past that if a municipality or someone lets you build it on the property line, we've had neighbors complain because we have to work on their property to finish the fence or stain the fence. So, you know, the Village of Balsam Lake requires your fence to be on your property and give enough access that, you know, if you built the fence and you got to fix it, you're not walking on my property to fix your fence. So I would have a discussion about that true setback. And yeah, we've been building fences for 25 years in Polk County, never built one over 6 foot tall. So I just throw that out at you too.
Never over 6 feet.
No.
So I do, I think.
Seven's a good idea. We buy 6 foot fencing, that's what you can buy. Anything over 6 foot is custom made. You can buy 6 foot pickets, any kind of fencing you want. And Jason's right, you're normally, if you're going up a hill, you know, that's the challenge is you're going up a hill, let's say you got a slope, there's going to be parts of the fence, so maybe it can even be, you know, I don't know how you get around that, but if you're on a slope like this, by the time you do a jog in a fence, you may have a couple spots that could be higher than 6, 7 foot. It's very reasonable that you could buy a 6 foot panel, but on one end of the fence, it could be 7 feet off the ground.
Yeah, I actually know where there's a fence like, you know, a privacy fence like that in a different county, but it's going down a hill like that and it's 6 or 8 feet wide. And then, you know, on one end, it's against the ground and on the other end, it's, you know, 1.5 feet off the ground. So in the scheme of things, you'd be, you know, but I think, but back to that brings us back to the, you know, the 2 feet that where we decided to stay on the property line again last time. But I get it. I mean, how do you work on the backside of your fence?
The neighbor don't like it, it's a problem.
If the neighbor doesn't like you, if you get along with your neighbor, it's fine.
If you were going to work on the Arkell's fence, you would have a problem. You remember
That's
that.
it. No, if you, you've crossed the line.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, the fence owner would just move it in 2 feet.
Well, yeah, hopefully you would, but if you got a permit to build on the fence line, and
Yep,
Mr.
no, and
Torrance
that's-
wants you building on the fence line, the Arkell's would have a problem.
We discussed that last time too, of that last meeting of that, you know, 2 feet, because I think you had, Jason, you know,
It's 2 feet. I know, like the city of Amory, I think
Yeah,
it's 3 feet, you know, and that. But then we were talking about, you know, losing a little strip on each property line, you know, and that on a 40 or 50 foot wide lot, you know, would take a piece of that. But maybe we should just add another clause in there, and that would say that the fence has to be made in a manner such that it can be maintained, you know, that from their property line. Because like those PVC panels, you know, that they're not gonna take a lot of, work from the other side. And a lot of times they go in between the actual posts, that, so you're able to fasten them and everything. But those ones aren't gonna take the maintenance as like a wood picket. So,
Oh, I like that. I mean, I'm for that idea of that you have to be able to maintain it on, from both sides from your property. I mean,
add a clause in there for that.
yeah, I mean, everybody's okay with that?
Yeah, I like the 7 feet.
Yeah, I do,
think
I
that's a
do
good
too, but
idea.
The village also, Brad, like in the village of Balsam Lake, they allow you, as long as you have a signed letter with the adjacent neighbor, so I got to go talk to my neighbor, you can put it on your property line. When you pull your permit, if the neighbor says, no, I'm not going to agree to let it go on the property line, then you have to be in 3 feet. So that's the way they handle that issue is you just have to have your neighbor sign a letter saying, I'm okay with putting on the property line. And if you don't get that agreement, then you have to have that room to do maintenance.
And when they sell, the next guy that buys it just has to be okay with it.
I'm not going to build it with mine.
yeah. So,
If you guys wanna do that, we can do that.
so are we okay with the letter from the neighbor to build on the fence line?
So you'd be going back to like a 3-foot side yard setback, 2 or 3, or whatever you guys want to make
Two or
that.
3, yeah.
And then, but if they want to be closer, they have to gain permission from their neighbor.
What happens in Balsam Lake if the property is sold?
It's the permitted fence. It was allowed to be there. It was
Yeah.
permitted.
Yeah, grandfathered in.
The other issue they run into, what I've seen in the past is, and it's the maintenance of the land on that 2 or 3 feet. So both neighbors say, put it on the fence line. That's my yard, that's your yard.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you get that fence over, you lose a little bit of property, and they could be, they could be 100-foot long fences between lake properties, so if the neighbors get along, most of them just always agree to put it on the property line, but
That's what we were talking about last meeting, was maintenance in that 2 foot.
yeah, that's an issue sometimes. They start using it and it becomes their property.
Yeah.
So if you can have a simple little deal in there where it's easy for the two neighbors, then the neighbor knows, hey, Mo, I'm going to build a fence. You care? No, I'm good. Can you sign a letter? I'm going to go get a permit. Yeah, put it on the property line. 90% of the time, it's going to be that way.
They don't get along, they probably want the fence there anyway.
Probably do.
That's a very good point.
I'd just like to eliminate that 2 feet if possible. Just seems like that becomes a problem to take maintenance and take care of it. You lose the property.
Yeah.
It's all right now, that, I mean, it's not in there right now, it's all, so.
But I kind of like the idea of the letter from the neighbor that way.
Yeah.
So we're okay with the letter from the neighbor. Otherwise, I think we should probably be 3 feet back so that I could mow my 3 feet. I don't know, does that make sense?
And you got those grass clippings going on to your,
Yeah.
are you gonna blow it towards your fence so it stays on yours, or you?
Well, I'm not gonna mow it,
You're
period,
gonna have
myself,
that
so I don't
anal
care.
neighbor, that anal neighbor not wanting your clippings on his grass, you know what I'm saying? There's.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're probably gonna have to mow it, mow it towards your fence, if your neighbor hates you that bad. But I think that's better than the 2-foot option. I don't know.
Or you put it on the line with permission from the neighbor, I don't know, to maintain
Yeah,
if needed.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so we got a consensus in that we're okay with 0-foot setback, but you have to be able to maintain it. And what about the letter from the neighbor?
With a letter from
Yeah, with a letter from the neighbor.
any neighbor.
Usually if they're building a privacy fence, they're probably not getting along with their neighbor. And does that mean that we can't issue a permit, And then on the property line, just because their neighbor won't sign off. I guess that'd be my fear. And I could, it's gonna put staff in the position where we're arguing how they can take and maintain their fence from their side if we have that clause, because the neighbor's gonna say, I didn't sign nothing, I didn't give them permission to maintain it.
So you're saying just leave it as you have to be able to maintain it from your side of the fence?
You know,
Here's what it looks like on that side. They gotta look at it, not us. Ours is all manicured up.
maybe you have your neighbor maintain it. You guys, this is all policies.
Well, you don't want to create a situation where you get two people that don't like each other and they want to put a fence on the property line. They have to get permission from the neighbor. The neighbor's not going to give them permission for anything because they don't like them. Even though they don't like them, they'd like to have a fence. They're not going to give it to them just because they won't give in to them.
People complain about it. So.
They're not getting along, so.
Sounds like a clam
I can
falls
tell
privacy
you,
fence.
Chair, I can tell you in my history of building fences, we've never had a problem with neighbors, even when they don't like each other, to build a fence on the property line either. The issue is just the maintenance later if the fence needs to be stained or finished. That's later, but to get the permit to build a fence,
They're usually okay.
they're always okay with building a fence.
Like Doug said, that if you're not getting along, you don't want to see your neighbor either, so if he'll build a fence. A lot of times,
Most of the time, the people are in agreement on a privacy fence. I don't see it where one's not okay with it. Except, and it's always in the lake, the only issue is going to be in Lakeshore.
Yeah.
That's the only place you're going to have it is around the lakes, where you're living close. And
I've got two that would like to just build a big bubble around their houses. I'm okay with that. The letter,
what are we okay with?
the letter, doing the letter,
What are we okay with?
getting a letter from the neighbor to be able to put the privacy fence on the property line.
Otherwise,
Leave
it's
it that
3
way,
feet.
and then if they don't agree, then they can move it back 2 feet and maintain it.
Okay, yep. So a letter or move it back 2
Foot
foot.
setback from the side property line unless a letter is obtained from the adjoining landowner to allow maintenance of that side of the fence. And then it can go right up to the property line.
And then 7 feet high.
7 feet high.
Now, what about open fence for height? And it's at 12 right now. That would be, barbed wire, split rail, anything that's going to be less than 50% opaque. So it could still be, pretty much a wall, so.
Be consistent. What are you thinking?
You don't want to know. Gray area, Sharon.
I would like to see 8. Only just 12, even if it's open, is pretty high, and I come back to the tipping over again. I mean, I know where there's a 12, 13 foot high fence right now, and it's already starting to. I mean, it's leaning in on the property owner, so it's going to fall on his.
Is it open? Is it open?
Privacy.
No.
So we're only talking about open.
But like a 1x6 measures actually 5.5 inches wide. So then if their gap is 2 3/4, and that would be 5.5. So if they're almost just a little over 2 3/4 and their gap 3 inches, and that they could have a 3-inch gap, 1x6, 3-inch gap, 1x6. People get that, and that to make sure that they're right at that 50%.
I mean, I'm not opposed to 12 there again. I'm just saying 8 from the tipping end tipping in standpoint. I mean,
Yeah, it
Because
is.
those fences can be within the shoreline area, well, or within that 75.
You want it to be consistent between the two and just go with 8 on both of them? As the
how about
max?
7 on both of them?
7. So do you see this type of fence, what's it called?
Opaque?
Opaque fence, that are taller than 6 feet?
No.
Only time is, and that dancing dragonfly down here with their winery, those fences are 8.
Yeah, now, if you're doing agriculture stuff, or you've got a garden, I can see people putting up taller fences in those areas to protect the garden, but as a privacy fence, if that's what you're calling it,
Yeah.
they don't need to be, even the 50% one doesn't need to be any higher than 7 feet. I would think,
Yeah.
we've done those where you leave those gaps.
Yeah.
Want, air to go through them, or they just like the look of them, or.
So like the ones at Dragonfly, that's a different category of fence. That's not opaque or that's
They
not,
fall into the open fence.
okay. Then I'm fine with 7 on the opaque.
7 on the opaque, that'd be privacy fence. So that'd be 7.
On the privacy fence. But on the open fence,
The open fence and that you guys were still talking about. So it doesn't have to be.
Oh.
and that's what you were saying.
Yeah.
You'd be okay with 7 on that too?
Well, is open like dancing dragonfly?
Open is like dancing dragonfly. Yep, just a wire mesh, basically a deer fence. So
So 8 is more reasonable for that, right?
yeah, 8 is how you buy your material for that.
Yeah.
And like our Apple River Solar project and that they're talking about.
8.
Yeah, because most of that wire is going to come in 8-foot.
Rules, yeah. Okay, 8.
So go 8 on that, 7 on the privacy, and that 2-foot side yard setback unless permission is obtained from the neighbor to go up to the line. So. All right, I think that covers pretty much everything.
So not. Just shut up. Tracy's looking at me. I don't do
Gonna add that down to gray. Maybe.
So we were good there, Jason. We're all done with.
Done with that. I'd like to take and be kind of flexible on when we do this amendment though, with the muni code. We kind of like to get that up and going and then we'll do the amendment. So it'll be, we talked last time, that'll be before the spring building season. But it might be a month or 2 here. So, but I think we've got everything done. I don't think you have to put it back on your agenda. I'll take it, I'll make the changes and I'll send it out to you guys and on email again, and then we'll go from there.
And if somebody sees something they want to change, we'll always have time to put it back on. But, yeah, but do we, just timeline wise, do we want to be on the March? Because it's got to go to the county board, right? So, do we want to, are you looking to be on the March county board?
I'd probably go April county board. So March, you still got a lot of frost and there's not too many people putting in fences in March, and that comes April and May, then we can start seeing some fence permits.
Okay, so we'd be looking at because we'll need a public hearing, right?
Yep.
So like the first meeting in March,
Meeting in
just to give us some flexibility.
That sounds good. We'll put it on the last meeting in February in case you guys have any changes then to prep for the public hearing. So. And then we had the surety bonds for the swine tables. And I believe that Corp Council was going to be looking into an opinion from Andy Phillips with the Wisconsin Counties Association. You know anything about that, Joe?
We could make a suggestion.
Yes, I do. I guess I can just open up and talk about it really briefly if that's what the group wants. Otherwise, if people have specific questions, I can kind of answer stuff. So I guess, how do you want to move forward? Do you want me to just kind of explain Andy Phillips' position?
Yep, just go ahead and explain.
Okay. So Mr. Phillips did get back in contact with us. I believe Malia reached out to him. The Corp Council's position continues to be that we potentially may have some issues if we do move forward with surety bonds. It's always going to be the same thing that we've told you before. There is no established law in this section. This is kind of attorneys taking our best, I don't want to say guess. We are applying our legal knowledge to what is written and coming out with what we believe to be likely outcomes. Okay, I think we've said that before. Mr. Phillips did get back to us and say that because of the recent attempts by lawmakers to change, or by DATCAP to change the administrative code, even though it hasn't happened yet, their justification for changing that administrative code to remove that $1,000 cap seems to indicate that $1,000 cap is likely not enforceable. The statutes, as they currently stand, say that there can be a cost for this sort of thing that can be put in place, but it has to be reasonably associated with what the likely cost to clean up some kind of problem would be, if that makes sense. The problem that we as a county run into is that we are limited to only the powers that are enumerated to us in the statutes. And because there is no specific statute that gives us the power to put a surety bond in place, unlike non-metallic mining, there is something in the statutes that say counties can put they don't call it a surety bond, they call it a financial assurance, but it's essentially the same thing, saying counties have this power to put that in place. There's nothing in the statutes that specifically delineates that the county has the power to put that surety bond in place. And as a result, we don't necessarily have that power. We've gotten responses from the Attorney General on many other questions where we've asked, hey, does the county have the power to do these things? And the Attorney General has said, no, you don't. There have also been court cases that say, no, you only have the powers delineated by statutes. So that's where that opinion is coming from. If the statutes don't specifically say that we have that power, we likely don't have that power. Now, our powers are different than towns, townships, and other municipalities, in that they may have more powers because they aren't limited in the same way that counties are to only powers delineated. Their rules are different than county rules. So Andy Phillips' response is more or less simply this: while that $1,000 cap may not be enforceable, that may give us a stronger argument for why we can put surety bonds in place that are above $1,000, but it doesn't necessarily bolster any kind of argument that we have that power at all. Did I explain that well?
No. We always used to say to our other corporate counsel, could we have it in English, please?
So long story short, while there is some question about, because there is currently administrative code that says that there's a cap on surety bonds of $1,000, that, in Andy Phillips' opinion, is not necessarily enforceable. Okay, so there's an administrative code that Andy Phillips is saying may not be legal, I guess, for lack of a better word. The problem for us, I mean, that's good, right? Great. Municipalities now have, or theoretically have, the power to set a surety bond above $1,000. As long as, sorry, excuse me, as long as it is reasonably associated with the actual cost of what the county believes cleaning up after some sort of issue would be. Okay, that's why we're asking for a surety, is in the case that there's, we know that there's going to be some cost. That's what sureties are supposed to be there for, right? We know there's going to be some cost in cleaning up a non-metallic mine. We know there's going to be some cost in taking down a cell tower. The problem is we don't necessarily know that there's going to be a cost cleaning up after a CAFO. That would be the argument that is likely to be made against us if we try to put a surety bond in place. Again, that's not even necessarily the biggest issue that we as a county run into. The biggest issue for us to put a surety bond in place is that we would need, if we get challenged on it, obviously if we never get challenged, it's up in the air. But if we get challenged on what we put in place, we would need to have a legal argument for why we have that power in the first place, because that's going to be the likely attack that gets made on our ordinance. And there simply isn't one that I've been able to find.
So Joe, you said earlier that, like, we have the legislature or the state, whoever, has given us the authority as the county to require a bond on non-metallic mines and towers. So we have that authority from the state legislature, but we don't have that authority when it comes to anything else, or anything that's not stated. We then don't have that authority. Did I get that right?
So again, because it isn't generally, yes, that is the rule. I'm not going to say that that necessarily applies here. There's a lot of nuance and specific language that goes into legal analysis of particular sections of statutes. As from my perspective, someone who is trying to overturn our ordinance or any county's ordinance would probably specifically focus on that point and say that a county doesn't have that power. Now, I want to caution all of you that it isn't probably the best practice to have Corporation Counsel give legal advice on how to contest some ordinance that you may want to pass. That's not necessarily best practice to ask me to come up with arguments for how to argue against myself in the future. It's I think I brought that up at the last county board that I attended as well, when a similar issue was brought up. But ultimately, what I'll say is this: if someone were attacking our ordinance, I believe that that is probably what they would try to use. And they may be successful. I would say that as of now, their likelihood of success would be relatively high. Doesn't mean they will win, and it's possible that we can come up with other legal arguments to try to fight whatever they file, but the likelihood of their success in trying to overturn our ordinance on a surety bond is somewhat high. Regardless, what I'll say is if the county board does decide as a policy to move forward with a surety bond, Corporation Counsel's office is fully prepared to defend that, fully prepared to come up with any legal argument that we can to bolster why we have that power. But like I said, based on previous cases and based on previous rulings from the, or opinions from the Attorney General, it's likely that they would succeed in trying to overturn it.
Any other questions for Joe?
Well, I have one. So, Joe, you said that mining and cell phone towers, that we know, you use those as examples, that we know that there's a cost associated with expenses that would be incurred for cleanup with them, but we don't know that with CAFOs? How do we not know that, or how do we get to know that? Is it just...
So my only point there is what I believe the board is looking at is trying to find some way to protect the county in the case that there is a spill, but that's not necessarily what the purpose of a surety bond is there to do. Surety is saying, we know there's going to be this cost. It's not what if there's this cost. It's we know there's going to be this cost on the back end. Therefore, how do we make sure that we're protected? How do we make sure that we as the county don't have to pay that cost? Whereas a CAFO, you don't know that there's going to be a cost associated. You hope that there never is a cost associated with cleaning anything up. You hope that there never is any kind of contamination. You are trying to stop, if there is a spill, how do we reclaim some of that money? And that's getting much further into it than we need to. But the biggest problem for the county is that the legislature pretty specifically in their CAFO statute says that all power related to CAFO, I mean, the legislature has taken the power away from the county about as much as they possibly can on the CAFO issue and put it in their own hands. And really, it's the legislature that is the biggest hold back on our ability to try to put anything forward at this point in time.
So I think on a non-metallic mine, Jason, or Joe, whoever, but we're just asking for a surety bond so that reclamation is completed, right? And that's it. We know that at the end of the day, the pit has to be reclaimed.
Yeah.
So we know what the end game is. Here it is.
Yeah.
If we've got a pit out by us that I think it tries to stay at 5 or 10 acres or whatever. So he's reclaiming on a yearly or bi-yearly basis to keep the pit as small as he can. But that surety bond is, if everything quit today, should be enough to reclaim those 5 or 10 acres or whatever is left to be reclaimed.
Cell phone tower, we know as soon as it's built that it's going to have to be removed, so that's a fixed cost down in the foreseeable future, whereas, a pig spill, nobody knows if it's going to happen or not.
Yeah. Yep, I get it. I just wanted a little clarification.
So any more questions for Joe?
No.
All right, thanks, Joe. Yeah, he'd already left.
He gave you a thumbs up.
Oh, I didn't know if you could see me or if I had to say anything. You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. And then would you like to jump into the software program?
Yep, anybody want to take a break or?
Only what's left.
Okay. Kind of uncommon for this committee, you know.
There's no cigarette. Leave the cigarette.
I'm going to start. Thanks for coming home.
All right, so we're almost exactly 1 year into our new permitting software in the zoning division. We went live with this on January 2nd last year, 2020. Just showing you here and that, this is the Polk County website underneath the land records online. And we can scroll down, and if you see that Ascent Permit Management Suite is right here. We've even got instructions for the public on how to take and check on their pending land use permit. We're right here in that, they hit the guide. So we open that up. And here's basically the screen that everybody would see. It's kind of the main search engine, if you will. One of the things for the public is that they can take over here to permit status and drop down to pending. And if you hit that find now,
Use the right click on the screen.
all right. So just backing up a little bit because I know it's hard to see. So what I did is I just changed the permit status here and that to pending. It pulls up all of our pending land use and sanitary permits right now. So we've got 43 permits outstanding right now. When we look at our permit numbers, the program itself had a certain amount of cost to it, and then the transition of all of our old permits over into this program, you know, we also had to do all of that data migration. And so we standardized some of our permit numbers. And so if we look at this one here, it's 2021, so that's this year's permit application. And then the 3 zeros and then the 7, that means it's land use permit number 7, and that we've done so far in 2021. LU stands for land use. SAN stands for sanitary. If we look, we got 3 sanitary permits outstanding in that from 2020 yet. And that you can see the year. The 48 stands for Polk County's number at the state through DSPS. And then the other one here, and that's the permit number. So it's kind of nice in that everybody is getting used to this numbering system so that they can kind of see when they pull their permits, you know, how many permits we've issued that year. So I'm just going to open up this one. So the applicant happens to be Don Waldock. We have all of our information here, and that we got land use. We're on a class 1 lake. Estimated cost of this project is $45,000. We have our permit status here. So as staff, we go in and change this to approved, you know, when it's done. We click on the date that it's issued, and we hit save. And now, if Mr. Waldock was to go in there and look at it right now, he's going to see that his permit was approved. It's literally real time. Everything's current. That's one of the huge things with this program is everything's up to date all the time. So before, our office was using a Microsoft Access program and that, an actual database. And Lori did a phenomenal job in that. I mean, she started from when the computer was half the size of this room working on this database. And she really did a really good job for customizing it to our office. But Lori has given us the idea that she's thinking about retirement and that. She did it again today. So she's moving on. And there's over 70 different tables in that Access database that she's created and is using to create all of her formulas. And I just don't think that we could find somebody in that could operate that system. So that's why we went with this. Everything is more standardized in here, and all of that is basically on the back side of it that we were not able to get in and tamper with all the tables. But IT and that still has it upstairs.
So Jason, question. So like that individual comes on, he sees his permit is approved. He can just print it off. He's good to go. He doesn't need to call you, see you, anything else.
He'll have his number here and that he can submit to the town building inspector, and he can see everything there. Let's say that it wasn't approved, and that let's say it was pending. As staff, we would put a note in here, waiting on reduced road setback approval by the town, or waiting on the sanitary permit to be issued if it was a new house before we can issue the land use. So, and when we enter in that note and that, so we save that, public can see that comment, they see the date and that, and they see who put that comment in. If there's a violation on a permit, we can track that information in here. If it's a variance or a public hearing, that, like we have a conditional use or zoning district change, we put all that information into here, and that, the type, the hearing date, the decision, everything's all done. Activities is something that I'd like to be able to track a little bit more on, hopefully on a normal year than that when we're not into COVID, but we can actually set up our activities in here. So if I'm reviewing this application, I can set an activity to go out and do an on-site, follow-up on-site visit, and I can assign myself, and I can put it as a pending status. The date I'm going to do it, I'm going to go in the field tomorrow, per se, or today, and I can save that. Then staff, being that we have administrative powers, we can get in there and we can run an activity report so that it'll print, oh, okay, I need to go to these properties today and that to check up on permits. And then I can come in here and the public can see that an activity has been scheduled. So they can see, oh, Jason's supposed to come out to my property today, and then we can go in there and hit complete. We haven't got to do a lot of that because of COVID, but that's one of the nice things about this. Activities can also be set and that for compliance issues. So if we have a violation going on a property, we can set activities to say, okay, I gave them 30 days to clean up that junk, and that come in here, you set an activity. Now, whenever we're at that 30 days, I'm going to print out my activity list, and whoa, here I got a compliance issue I got to go check on. So it's got some nice features that way.
So it would tell you anything. I mean, you can punch tomorrow's date and today, say today, and it would bring any of those things that.
Up until tomorrow's date,
Right, but, if you're checking on a violation or going out to make a site visit, it would automatically print any of them out for you. Okay.
Jason, so that's all underneath the activities, no matter if it's a violation or if it's a follow-up visit or whatever, that's all in that section right there.
Correct. Yep, and that's, we have various different things we can go check on. If we have a property that's got high impervious surface and they needed to install some rain gardens and that, we would put that information in here. And that, I have been doing that because we give everybody 2 years from the permit issuance to finalize that rain garden and stuff, basically while their permit is active. So, but then we got to go back and check on that somehow, so this way here and that we can take and put in there that activity 2 years out from the permit issuance date. And then we're going to get that when we run our activity report.
Right, so then this would say, I mean, you could put that date in as 2023, May of 2023, and 2 or 3 days before that date, you printed it, it'd say, oh, you got to go out to wherever and check on the rain guide.
It'd be after that date, you know.
Okay,
that-
yeah, but-
Yes.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of our way of, you know, keeping up on some of this stuff. You know, you guys have had sunset clauses in the committee. You've got to plant some trees and that for a buffer. That's how we're tracking it. So, fees are pretty self-explanatory, you know, in that. We just go in here, we can add a new fee. We have our different accounts. We worked on it in 2020 and we got our number of accounts down so that we didn't have a huge long drop-down list here. We can still run reports for each one of these so that we can still see how much we're taking in plat review, see how much we're taking in, and that for the towns on rural address fees to make sure that we're paying the towns out the same amount, and to make sure that we're paying the county and that share of the state sanitary permits to the state. So for every state sanitary permit, the county pays a groundwater surcharge fee of $100 a permit. So that's why that's separated out here. So to the state. Yep. Here's our conditions and that we assign with the permit. So the building inspector is going to be depending on what town the permit was pulled in. And then this one here happens to be an accessory building or a garage, so we have the condition that there's, you know, that storage only, no human habitation, and then the permit expiring. If this was a rural address, we have custom conditions set up for a rural address that tells you, you know, to expect it to be 10 to 12 weeks and it'll be installed by the town and that kind of stuff. If we have a hearing, we have a standard condition about the denial of the hearing and about their ability to take a petition with a writ of certiorari to the court. And that's so basically, and then at any time we can hit a custom condition, type in our own thing, you know, and that old house must be removed when the new house is completed, for example, and assign it with the permit. So
It's interesting, those building inspectors you have listed there, those are the ones you most commonly deal with, or at least provide coverage here.
correct. And then these are all the inspectors in that within Polk County. So right here. So, yep. So that's kind of how we go through in our day-to-day operations and that of a permit. The huge thing with this program, you know, that last year, and that just to hit on our annual report a little bit, we had 363 state sanitary permits and over 50 county sanitary permits. And that, so we're in that, you know, 420 range in that as far as permits go for sewers. And that on land use, we did 939 land use permits last year. Backing up to the sewers, we were up 28% on sanitary permits last year. Land use permits, we were up 10.6%, or exactly 90 permits from 2019. The increase in sanitary permits being 28% versus land use of being 10.6. A lot of the systems that are being installed, the design of them nowadays, are lasting about 15 years, give or take 12 to 15 years. The old rock sewer systems that lasted 30 and 40 years are not that way. And that, I mean, they're not lasting like these new ones are. The new ones, people are using more water. You know, medications and prescriptions are hard on sewers. And we had a big building boom in that from 2000 to 2008. And so there we go. Here we have our 12 to 15 years. And so that's why I think we're seeing an uptick every year in the amount of sewers that we issue, much larger than our growth in land use permits, is because these systems are starting to fail. So there are a lot of replacements. And so I expect that to grow, and I expect it to keep on growing because we only had 135 new homes, and that out of 363. So that gives you an idea how many are replacements. So
that's no
240 or almost double.
No difference as it grows in, let's just say 5 or 6 years, when we hit 2009 or whatever, we'll more than likely see a sharp drop in them.
But at the same time, in our program here, active sewer systems in Polk County, we have roughly 16,600 sewers. So there's a lot of systems. We're issuing, another 130 to 150 a year, so that number is going to grow too. But I think that, yes, we're going to see much, an increase in permits here for the next 10 years, for sure.
So Jason, when you say that those are active, 16,000 some active, are those just based off of, say, like the cards you get in the mail from the pumper that says we pumped LeBlanc's, whatever today and blah? I mean, so how do you track the ones who should be pumping but decide to pump their own? How, I mean, granted, you're not a babysitter. They should know every 2 years, depending on your system, how often it should be pumped. But there are those people out there.
So we've got old permits and as Lori's going through back scanning, she's done an excellent job. Everything is back scanned so every permit that we have from Highway 8 to the north is all done. And right now she's working and she's through about 20 sections in Osceola. So everything south of Highway 8, besides what she's got done in Osceola, still has to be back scanned. But when we do that, she's assigning a permit number, which then is also put into this program. So then now we know that we have an active sewer system on that property. Now, if we're talking 60s and early 70s sewer systems that are still out there working, the county had to do an inventory and it had to be completed by like January 1st of 2019. So we went by assessed value on the property for the improvements. I think it was over 60,000 or something like that. We took and made that say, okay, that's got a sewer system. So there is some gray area there, but it gives you an idea. So
Yeah, because technically that's inactive, so I mean, they're not doing what everybody else is doing, so they have an inactive sewer. It's like, how does that part catch up to?
Okay, so this is where the enforcement comes in. Because yes, there's a lot of systems like that out there, and it's not Polk County. We're not unique. Everybody in the state is having issues with how do you make people pump their sewers.
Yeah.
If I was to take and start writing citations, I could probably write 1,500 citations today, to do it. So the numbers are so massive that it's too overwhelming almost to take and follow through on. And the program here sends out a card or a notice, and then it sends out another one. Now this program is different. We used to send it out one card and then we'd send out a card the following year. Now with this one, we send out a card, give them 60 days to take and pump it. And if it hasn't been pumped, we send another card the same year. And then the following year, we do a warning letter and an actual letter, to take and get it pumped, But then after that, then we're at citation point, and it's just too much.
Right. I mean, it's hard to police. I mean, you guys are doing a good job. It just is, it's hard.
And the system works, I mean, I've been looking at it while you've been talking, I've been following along, but a lot of people do use it, because I've had people call me and say, Sharon, I went out on the Polk County website, how come they gave a permit to, I have had, and you probably know who I'm talking about. But,
The first of the month, and Lori said it didn't take her a lot of time because she had it in her program, but she had about 30 different independent reports that she was, running at the first of the month every time, and that to send out to Lamperts, to send out to the building inspectors, to send out to the assessors, and that it was a lot of time, and now those people can access it when they want to. And that when they're working on the town of Garfield and they want to see what kind of permits are in there, they can go in and it's a quick thing, and here's all the permits. Okay. And that if he's an assessor or if he's a building inspector. So it's very easy that way. You can see our permit that we just issued, 2021-0007, is gone. Now we're down to 42 permits. At one point this last summer, we had up to 120 pending permits at one time.
Jason,
So-
you want to talk about like some of the town chairs, like Beaver?
Yep, and that's,
They're actively paying attention to this because they are curious about any new development.
yep.
We do too.
Correct. And that, Town of Johnstown supervisor, just called me, last week and got his own account, you know. And when you open up this as a public, you won't be able to run any of the reports because we want to be able to at least see who's running those reports in case information gets out or there's a data leak. But anybody can get an account and that, we've got a whole pile of them. And that you can set up your own username and then you basically can have all the access that we have and that you just can't issue permits. So, but here's all the accounts that we have of people that can get in and use it right now. So it's quite a list.
How
So
much has this speeded up the process?
Efficiencies?
the efficiencies of that have increased a lot. Let me,
Particularly, farm permits and for the pumpers.
so So for like staff, we don't even fill out, a card anymore. We can just scroll down here and hit permit placard and print that out. We can take and do our inspection reports through here. And that if this was a land use permit application, I can print off the application so that the owner doesn't even have to fill anything out. All he's got to do is sign his name. So there's a lot of efficiencies that way. The biggest thing as far as staff time, and I'm just going to pull up one property here.
There's the customer service element to it as well. The efficiencies of being able to apply, pull a permit
So this is
much quicker.
just one search in that I did because it's got a nice mix. You can see we got a land use permit here, 24331. That's an old land use permit, but it still shows you it was issued in 96. Easily, you can see, hey, we got a land use permit here from 2020, and then we have an old sanitary system here. And when we pull up the sewer, the main thing is this maintenance. So the state requires us to track maintenance on those 16,000 systems. And when we look at this report, all of these reports going all the way back to 2010 when the sewer was installed, Lori in our office entered every single one of these reports in, and that when it was pumped and then when it was reported and who the pumper was. She'd have to go in and manually enter that all the way up. Now you can see a big change here in 2020 and that it was pumped on 114. It was filed on 3/4. They pumped 1,500 gallons. Curtis Olson or Olson Sewer is the one that pumped it, and the pumper filed it. And so now when we take and run our reports to see what's being tracked, and that's what it's looking at. And it used to be that all the residents and that had to mail their card back to the county, and then we'd get stacks of mail and postage and stuff. Now the card goes out. It's just a notice you had to call the pumper, but then the pumper goes in here, so you don't have all of those cards coming back in. We don't have the staff time and that to report all this. You think about this with 16,000 systems. Now a holding tank, could be pumped every 6 weeks, 8 weeks. That's an incredible amount of time. I mean, I would argue that it was close to half of Lori's time. So, and that now true, and that we looked at this back in 2017 about doing this whole program. And at that time, I did a kind of just a random phone survey with all of our pumpers. They're like, absolutely not. We don't want to do that. And so we kind of backed off. And then Burnett County got the same program, and St. Croix County also got the same program, and Barron's got a similar program. And so now they're all on board. They're all doing it for all these other counties. And then it was like, why hasn't Polk County done this? Because it is a lot faster for them. And if there's issues, And if a pumper has problems with a customer, when they file their report, it'll actually take and send a trigger to us. So like if the system's failing or they're pumping it on the ground, there's actually questions that they answer when they file the report, and then that can trigger a red flag for us to go out and inspect it. So it's got that kind of information in it too. Now, most pumpers don't like to narc on their customers because if you just get your sewer pumped and then all of a sudden zoning shows up at your house, a month later, after nobody's been there for 3 years, you're probably not going to call that guy back.
Yeah, that's right there too.
So, just it's the way it is. So that's kind of the maintenance reporting side of it. Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of the way. There is a lot of different things you can take and do in there, but that's basics of it, how it works. So the main thing is that everything's out to the public, online, timely, and that they can get in, they can run their own reports whenever they want. They can check status on permits, and that it helps staff manage time for those activities and keep track of them. And it also provides, and that's just a better way, and that to take and do the septic maintenance reporting and that we're required to by the state. So, with that, annual report and that new homes, we were actually down 3.6% on new homes this year, but in number wise, it's only 5 houses. So this year we did 135 new houses. Last year was 140. We took and changed quite a few addresses this year. We had an address change on Baker Road, and that was to take and comply with some new dwellings out there, and we had a lot of A's and B's. So we changed 134 addresses to comply with the county's grid system. So, and virtually no complaints. So the last one that I did was 8 people on a private road. They were all residents. And that only had one guy that was complaining a little bit about the cost of switching over all of his documents. But everybody on that road said it's about time. Why didn't we do this sooner? And that because of the issues that they had A through F, and that was their addresses. So we're getting more and more towns in that want to buy in on that. So number of public hearings, 28 in that we had. That's about average. That's come down quite a bit, much to your guys' ordinance amendments. Back in, the 2014 to 2016 time, we'd be running 55, 60 public hearings and a lot of variances and a lot of conditional uses for the tourist rooming houses and stuff. That's the change, and that's what made it drop. 2016 is that special date because that's when the big comprehensive rewrite was done, and that's when we really seen the numbers drop off there. So that's basically all I've got. One thing in our budget and that will be gone next year is Wisconsin Fund Grant Program. We actually had a pretty good year. We had 4 applicants in that qualified for the program, and they got $10,872 for helping with their failing sewer systems. The state has actually just shut that off. So anyway, so that's sunsetted because of the budget cycle. If it comes back, we'll qualify probably in that for doing it again, but not this year. So any questions?
In your packet is his report. I'm sorry, Sharon.
That's okay. I just thought of this because I'm looking at one of these reports. Like I just ran for the town of St. Croix Falls, all the open permits. I wonder if our town clerks even know about this because our town clerk prepares an Excel spreadsheet every month for a board meeting that says, here's all the permits that what's his name is working on, building permits. And
I don't think I've set up an account with Janet, so she probably can't get into that information. So,
I'm going to talk to her.
It would create some, because normally at the town or even city level, those clerks just create a spreadsheet, but it's really a lot of paperwork.
Well, our
And
clerk was out most of this year, so she just might not be aware, so it's be a good thing.
One other thing in that, probably under my report, the best indicator in that for growth in the county and where we stand compared to where we were before the recession, and that is that first line chart. And if you look at that, we got, 363 sanitary permits. And the reason why I'm referring to sanitary and not land use is because we take care of the sanitary in all of the towns. And that, so including the towns that are unzoned or they have their own zoning. But if you draw those lines back, and that we're back into about the 2007, 2006 timeframe, is about when we'd be at this number, So it gives you an idea. It's almost as good as right before the crash. So.
again, we're trending up. You can clearly see in 2008 with the housing bubble going down, and now we're going back and trending back up, which just demonstrates, some new development. And that's a really good indicator for housing is your sanitary permits. It's a really good measurement to track that.
And the office, as far as, staffing levels and that, from 1990 through 2011, there was 4 staff in zoning. And then since then, and that we've had 3, but now you guys have approved that new hire, which will bring our office back to 4, and that with Lori. So you can just kind of see how that has changed too. So it is kind of representing the workload, is what I'm saying. Department revenues, sewer systems, big thing to point out, holding tanks and mounds. Those are some pretty big numbers, and that 86 holding tanks, that's huge. We're probably one of the few counties in the state that would even have close to that amount of holding tanks. Reason being, and that is because of our lake properties, and we have a lot of sites and that are either really small lots or we have high groundwater out on Bone Lake. So 90% of the sewers right around Bone Lake are holding tanks. So, and lately there's been quite a few of them that are cracking and failing. So mounds and that's showing that we've got a bunch of lots that are previously developed prior to 2008, and they're finally getting built on. But the nice lots sold before 2008, and we kind of got the junk left over on that. So we got poorer sites, and we're seeing a lot more mounds on those. So from staff's time, and that mounds do take us quite a bit longer. It's almost twice as long to do mounds as it does a conventional. So between our on-site inspection and our staff reports. So.
And just to reiterate, some takeaways from zoning's work last year. Again, state sanitary permits were up 28.2% in 2019. Land use permits were up 10.6%, or nearly 11% in 2019. New homes were down, though, as Jason mentioned, 3.6%, but it's really just 5 homes. In other words, 135 new homes were built last year, as opposed to 140 in 2019. And then Jason talked about, again, a big takeaway, issuing 89 new addresses and changing 134 existing addresses.
So do we know, just as far as homes, I mean, we're down, 3% or something, just because of 2020. Do we have any idea how our surrounding counties done on a percentage basis?
Not yet.
Okay.
So it's all year end. I just completed this report last week at the end. We called it a year at the 30th or whatever for all of our bookkeeping and stuff. So
Good question, though, because the census data was compiled last year. Usually it takes a year or two, probably next spring, not this spring, but next spring you'll start to see some qualitative data from the Census Bureau, both at the local, state, and federal level. That'll give us some ideas on what's happening here in Northwest Wisconsin.
another good indicator of growth is the 54 subdivisions. and that's pretty big. We've had 3 major plats, and that, which, we didn't have a plat for years after 2008, and that, so, but 54, that's a pretty high number. I think last year we were only in the 40s, and that, like 42 or 44. So you got another 10 subdivisions, and that there. The highest I've seen that in the last 5 years is about 60. So we're pretty close to the top end. So there's a lot of surveying work. There's been a lot of people that have been complaining though because they can't get surveyors, so, but that's why it's showing. So.
Yeah, if you know a youth who's struggling to find a career path, surveying. There's a real demand for surveyors.
So, total of 1,345 permits in 2020. So.
Good job, Jason.
That's busy.
Thank you.
Good
It's
presentation.
interesting, you could get in there and I clicked on my own, and then I could see all the stuff, and I thought, why did I apply for that permit?
What's really nice is that it's all available to the public, and it's in a format that's pretty easy for anybody to use. You get in there, you can play around just a little bit, and you can figure it out. So, and what's really nice is
Easily filled now, Sherry.
No, I've already.
I'm not sure about that last comment because I asked Bob if we could have some schooling on it, because I have a heck of a time with that site.
okay.
But you said if you play around with it, I'm not a computer guy.
Right.
And
You can visit one of us.
I think you helped today and some of what I have to do. And the last time I put in a property, the number instead of the name,
Yep.
and then I got further than I had before.
If you have property number or address, I wouldn't search by name very often, and that
That's what I
because,
start with because that's what I know.
but there's so many people that have trust, and that, I mean, I might have, a JK trust, and if you search by Cheez-It or Jason, it's not going to come up, so that's where an address or parcel number that links it specifically to the property is better, so, and here, and that, we have all of our PDFs. So if you were in the program and you want to just hit the parcel number, it'll bring you to the map and zoom into the parcel automatically. And then from here, you can click on the permit and actually see what it was and see the drawing and stuff. So that's how it's all linked right into the GIS mapping.
The
So
parcel ID number is the easiest for them. Do you know how to get to those, the PID?
What?
The parcel number?
I do know how to do that.
Oh, go ahead.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've got the GIS on there.
Like Jason showed you, click on
Yeah,
that.
I
it'll
can
take you to the
go do that
permit.
right there.
oh, they're here too.
I think he gave you lots of ammo today.
And I didn't even know it existed till like 45 minutes
Oh,
ago.
you're kidding.
I think he gave me lots more ammo than just permits.
Glad I don't live in Clayton.
But you do use it then?
Oh, yeah. Ever since, once I could finally get on, I was having login issues at first, but now, yeah, every month my board gets a list of what's out there and what's going on, so.
Like I said, we got all the data transferred over before Lori left us, and it was hard, and that we had over a year in getting everything migrated, but it went pretty seamlessly, and we've
Oh,
had
yeah.
pretty good luck with it. So we got a little cleaning up in that I'm going to be doing here. I actually emailed the company a couple of times today, and that, so on a few things.
Awesome. Good job.
Sounds good.
So we have the public hearing next time, right?
Right, that's for the Gray properties. The conditional use permit.
That's in 2 weeks then, right?
Yep.
Okay.
It's posted and legally published.
Yes.
We are getting comments. And similar to when we did the rezone, Jason's collecting those and collating them. The idea is to collate them and provide them to you all prior to the hearings. So you can review
That's what I
them.
was gonna say. We'll get them all, right?
That's the plan because
I would, and I,
that's what's posted in the notification that folks can provide written comments.
Yeah.
And
So-
we still had some left over from the rezone, if you remember that correctly.
so I would, as far as I'm concerned, I think we should, and now that it's 2 weeks out, I'd like to see them just as they come. so I don't get 40 of them on Monday before the meeting. That way I can read 6 every day for 2 weeks, or whatever.
Well, generally, the clerk sends them as she gets them to us.
Well, Jason's been receiving them.
I'll be compiling them. I
Oh,
haven't got
from the
any
public
yet.
comments,
really.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
if he's going to compile them, we don't necessarily have to read them. Because are you just compiling them by oppose or for or against or in like various reasons? Or how are you?
You can do that if you want. When I say compile, I just put them all and I exhibit them, and that. So in the order that they come in, you would
Right?
exhibit them 1 through 20. But if you would like a tally or a summary of how many are for or against, I can definitely do that.
Wouldn't you think that would be so much easier? I mean, instead of sitting list or reading
Well,
every single.
I guess the only reason I want to see them is so that I can read them. Because I don't want Jason to have to read 45 of them.
No, not on that day.
In 2 weeks. I would like to read them and then listen to Jason say, so we had 35 letters come in, and here's kind of the high points, so to speak, of what, 18 of them said we want this condition, and 12 said we want this condition.
Technically, the way that we have it published right now, and that is that I have to send them out, and that to do whatever you want to do with, and that. But then I'm going to be paraphrasing, or I'll hit the high points, and that kind of as a summary, probably, and that as part of the staff report. So I'm sure we're going to get public comment on it. So anyway,
You can read them while you're looking at the Ascent program.
Oh, no, the Ascent program needs all my attention.
That's the same road that Quick Trip is building on too. So it's just a mile
Quick
away.
Trip is a must, though. I'm not going to argue there.
I hate them.
Must.
I hate them.
A must.
All right. So we got the public hearing. You said, I think earlier, an update on PTAG of what they've been coming on. I
Clark
think,
has the forest distribution payments to the towns,
okay,
and there's also his administration grant. Those 2 items shouldn't take too long. Discussion of Apple River Solar Project, I suppose that's up to you all. We could punt on that because they're coming in February.
no, I think so. Well, let's put it at the bottom of the list.
In case we have something before.
There again, put it at the bottom of the list, and we'll know that, today it took all of 12 seconds. So if nobody's got anything, but like there again, you guys will probably have a town board meeting between now and then, so if something comes up, I will hand out my resolution coming next meeting.
I thought you were saying resignation.
Resignation.
For what? Oh, resignation.
Oh, my God.
Oh, no, I got that. I had a guy show up with his resignation the other day. So, you want one, Vince? So, and there again, Bob, you need one, or
I do need one, yeah, if you don't mind.
I'll charge you for one. I'll send you the bill. And there again, just put it on the end. Wow, you want one just to see it, or? Oh, did you want one?
You can look at it.
Put it on the end. There's 2 meetings. If we get to it and we have time, fine. If we don't, we'll just.
And then, because the next meeting, which is January 20th, is the day after the county board, we might have some movement on the Stour master plan county commitments. Is that an agenda item to be added, or I'm just assuming that your resolution that you recommended today will be on the county board agenda on the 19th. There might be a new development, new directive. I'm not sure of the outcome, but is that of any value to bring to the committee, or could we punt on that as well?
I think I don't, till we know what the outcome is, it's going to be hard. And there again, we have the 3rd. You know, if whatever happened and it was coming back to us, we would still have February 3rd
Before the board meeting.
to look at it. I mean, because I think, at least my opinion is I think that the public hearing will take up a considerable amount of time. I mean, I think we got some things on there that we can look on at afterwards, but it's going to be the majority of the meeting. You know, and that's why some of these things, if they roll to February 3rd, is fine.
Oh, yeah, it's still the end of the meeting.
Yeah, it's still ahead of the February board meeting.
I'm okay with that.
All right.
Whatever you think is best.
Outside the placeholder of divisional updates, we talked about the amendment to the shoreline protection ordinance regarding the fencing. That can wait till February at the earliest, or March or April. Yeah, there's your agenda, unless there's other things to add.
One thing, Mr. Chair, and that probably either on the February 3rd or the February 17th committee, we will have another zoning district change public hearing. I assume it's not going to be contested, but if Apple River Solar is here on the 3rd and that, I think we can push it back to the 17th. So I'll work on the notice and that, and we'll hit one of them dates. So.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
No second. All in favor? Aye.